What actually happens on closing day when you purchase or sell a home? Today, I'm joined by two excellent Ottawa colleagues of mine. We have one of our favorite lawyers, Cecilia Perdigao, and we have Chris Allard. And today, we are going to talk about and walk you through exactly what the closing process looks like here in Ottawa and in Ontario. I'm Nick Fundytus, and this is Realtor in Your Pocket podcast.
You're listening to Realtor in Your Pocket podcast. Do you want a head start on buying, selling, or renting in Ottawa? You're in the right place. Every episode brings you great advice and insight that you can keep in your back pocket until you make your move. And now, here's your host, Nick Fundytus.
Welcome to the podcast, both of you. Thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Tell me each a little bit about yourself. Cecilia, you want to tell us?
So I've been a lawyer for about 15 years now. Was a real estate assistant for what feels like forever before that. Originally from Northern Ontario, so I have a hearty background. I've been in Ottawa for over 24 years. And I have now practiced solely in real estate for a couple of years. I dropped off all areas of law other than that. So this is what I eat, breathe, sleep.
Yeah, and you're one of our team's go-to lawyers, and you were a previous guest on our show to talk about the status certificates for condos.
Yes,
yeah.
Something that was really, really important during a time of our market where people weren't
looking at them, weren't getting them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now they're starting to again. Chris, how about you?
Yeah, mortgage broker in Ottawa, born and raised in Ottawa, French Canadian. Been in the mortgage business for about 10 years, a little over 10 years now, I'd say, and always at the very same desk, but we've changed the name on the front door a few times, and now we're called Smart Debt Mortgages. So there you go.
Yeah, and I've known you since you were a new mortgage broker, and I've seen you grow the team, and you're well regarded in Ottawa as well. So we're happy to be one of the people that works with you as well.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. You know, we're really proud of our team. You know, I've got a few salaried staff now, and life is good. You know, we've got a whole process.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay, so we're going to walk listeners through. This is primarily a buyer-focused one, but we can touch on what happens on the seller side too, and just talk about what happens on closing day. So first of all, when does a lawyer get involved in the closing process?
That actually depends on the nature of the agreement of purchase and sale. So if buyers are buying a new build, we normally get involved as soon as they've signed their agreement because they have a conditional period for solicitor review. If it's a private transaction, we're involved before the agreement is drafted because normally they're looking for our help in drafting the agreement. And if they are working with an excellent team, a real estate agent, which would be ideal, then we actually get involved after they sign the agreement. So that way we know what they're talking about, what they're looking for. So it really depends on what team a purchaser is working with. Okay.
And then, Chris, when is mortgage broker getting involved in the closing process?
Yeah. Well, in the closing process, first we have to get the file approved. So I would say once the file is approved, we typically will try to connect with the real estate lawyer, the solicitor, as soon as we can. Not that there's a ton of work to be done at that time, but we want to make sure that all the parties are communicating effectively and that the real estate lawyer knows that we're part of the transaction. And the reason that's important is mostly so that if there are roadblocks or hurdles to jump through, we want to be a help to the lawyer and make sure that we're there to support them because there are always little hurdles, and it's always best if we can manage them through the circle of professionals on the file.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so on the mortgage broker side, you're often involved with the client even before we meet them. Sometimes when we meet somebody, I'll meet somebody off of Reddit. I've had that a bunch of times where somebody gets in touch and I say, go talk to a mortgage broker first. Here's a couple of names. You're one of the names we send out. And you're very popular on Reddit, by the way.
I don't
know if you know. Yeah.
You know what? I've never been on Reddit myself, but I hear a lot of people see my name.
But we usually send them to you first so that they come and they have an idea of their financial picture before they come. And I say, same thing with me, like by the time closing comes around, it's really the lawyer's show. They're doing the movement, the stick handling of getting everything done between buyer and seller and the mortgage and stuff like that to make sure it all closes safely. But my recommendation to clients is always, have your team assembled and communicate. My role kind of becomes quarterback. If something goes wrong, I'm there to get involved. If everything goes smoothly, you could have the most basic, team on the planet. But if anything goes sideways, that's when you want that's when you want the professionals.
Absolutely, for sure.
Second question. So what does a seller or buyer have to have ready to close on their purchase or sale? We'll start with you again, Cecilia.
Well, they have to have the time set aside to actually meet with their lawyer and their mortgage broker in a certain time slot. And, they shouldn't bank on after-hour appointments. Not all of us offer them. They should also bank to be in person because some lenders require in person. Some lawyers require in person. So generally speaking, lawyers will send out a retainer letter at the very, very beginning, and it may be several pages long, so people generally skim it or not read it because it seems daunting. But they need to have that time set aside so that way they can review all the documents. And I would suggest they have that time set aside at least 3 or 4 days before their closing date. So that way, if there's any surprises or hiccups, we still have a buffer of time before the closing date to deal with them.
That's really important, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And people always think, it's closing date. I only have to have my money available on the closing date. I only have to be there on the closing date. And that is a misunderstanding for sure. They need to make sure their money is accessible at least 2 or 3 days before the closing date. Having it locked away in investments and it takes 5 business days to come up with a bank draft is not going to cut it.
Yeah.
They also need to make sure that they have done everything that their broker has asked them for. Because if a broker is asking them for something, that's because they need to send it to the lender.
Thank you, Cecilia. What a great point.
Oh my gosh.
Thank
you. Yes. So it's basically they need to be ready with the primary things in order to purchase something of this size. You need the money, you need the in-person time, and you need to have the communication with your team.
Yeah. And that's why it's good having a team. It's good having a team who knows each other and knows each other's process, so that we can help guide you through really nice and smoothly.
On that, there's just a couple of quick things I should point out, which is we always try to send a letter or an email to the real estate lawyer, kind of introducing them to who the lender will be, what all the basics are of the file. If we have identification for the client or a void check or a pre-authorized debit form, we try to send that information to the lawyer early on as well, so that they've got a piece of the file already.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. So what happens on closing day, on closing day itself from the lawyer side of things?
Well, hopefully the two of you get to relax a little bit on that day and that it gets to be my show that day. However, it's really helpful to know the team because, like you mentioned, when things go sideways, you're the two people I'll be reaching out to.
Yeah.
So when we're buying, the first step is actually receiving money from the lender. And it's not the mortgage broker that gets to hit click on the button to fund. It's somebody sitting somewhere far, far away that never meets the client.
Doesn't care about them personally.
Doesn't know them, doesn't have to listen to them if they're upset. It's just one of those things, which is also why we want to sign early so we can send everything to them. So that way I can follow up the night before going, we're going to have money first thing in the morning, right? So once we receive the funds, then we do a bank run. So we get the funds certified or initiate a wire, whatever it is, to get that money over to the seller's lawyer. And we have to provide some signed documents with that. And normally the seller's lawyer is sitting around waiting for this to arrive because they have probably provided us with their client signed documents beforehand. And then once both lawyers are satisfied, they've got what they are supposed to receive, then the purchaser's lawyer can attend to the registrations. So that's when we register the transfer and the mortgage. And as soon as that registration is complete, the transaction's actually done. So that means the owners have switched. So people always want to know, what time? What time? Well, that depends. When do we get the money? Because that starts the ball rolling. Generally speaking, it's between 2 and 5. You want it to be as early in the day as possible. Sometimes it's 5 to 5, and that's a really bad day.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, though, if you haven't heard from your lawyer by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that's time to call and check in. You don't need to take the day off on your closing date. You actually want to keep your mind busy so that way you're not watching the minutes tick by. And if things go a little sideways, then that's when you'll get an email from the lawyer going, this is what's going on. This is how we can try to fix it. These are the options. What are we going to do? And that's when it's really, really nice to be working with Chris and his team, because I know that they're going to reply to those emails fast. And normally they already know what the plan is. So that's where things are hugely impacted by the team that you work with, is on closing date itself. People that are new to the game may not know what to do, or they don't know that time is important, so they don't answer right away. People that have been doing this as long as we have, we know when our closing dates are, and we have our phones handy.
Right.
And that makes a world of difference, because sometimes 20 minutes makes a world of difference.
Yeah. So that is, to tie into that, on the realtor side of things, one thing that I always tell the clients is, well, two things. One is, don't try and move on closing day.
Oh, gosh, no.
The last thing you want is, just on the off chance that it gets delayed a day and you have a moving truck full of stuff and no place to put it. Because full moving truck parked somewhere is like an invitation to somebody to rob your car of all your things at the same time. And the second bit is just to, if you can, try and close on a not busy day, so that, like a Wednesday, not at the end or the start of the month. So not when there's a whole bunch of other closings that might be going on in the background across the city that could impact yours. So I think that's a couple bits that hopefully have helped clients over the years. Okay, so what costs are there to closing?
Well, there's a number of costs. Well, there's the legal fees for sure. There is also the title search fees, the title insurance fees. Title insurance is optional from a practical point of view, but realistically, it's a no-brainer. It saves so much money in the long run. A lot of the disbursements vary from file to file, so to get an exact amount isn't possible on the upfront side.
Sure.
It's as we go, because title searches vary from property to property. We also have things like photocopies and law society transaction fees and tax certificates. There's some small variances, and sometimes that depends on who the lender is. Some lenders have 80 pages worth of instructions, and some insist on a tax certificate even if they have title insurance. Some will insist on one title insurance company over another. It does vary. Ultimately, any real estate lawyer will give a fee quote at the onset, so that way purchasers can take a look at what the different things may be and a range of what they should expect. I know back in the day, they said to set aside 1.5% of your purchase price for closing costs. I haven't done that lately to see if that's still close.
With the land transfer tax, it's no longer true.
Yeah.
So it's more expensive than that in a lot of cases. The one situation where we'll see it not be as much is for first-time home buyers, because they're getting the first-time home buyer rebate or discount. So in that instance, it may not be quite as expensive from what I'm seeing. With that though, you touched on the specific fees, but I often hear certain clients say, the lawyer's saying an all-in fee, or this lawyer's saying not an all-in fee. I think it'd probably be worth you touching on what that really means, because we often have clients that will say, well, I'm going with this lawyer because they're more or less expensive. And I often have to remind them that they're not comparing apples to apples when they're getting these, let's call them quotes.
Oh, Chris, you put me on the spot on that one. So the all-in fee, and then you scroll down to the bottom of that and you see a little asterisk that normally excludes the most expensive disbursements that change the all-in fee. I definitely have looked into the competition that offers that, interestingly enough, because I received their brochure in my mailbox one time. And I compared it to the average invoice that I had sent out to clients. And it turns out that the all-inclusive fees look like they're going to be cheaper and often are not.
Right.
At the end of the day, when people are comparing fees because they're cold calling and just asking, I generally say, okay, if you're going to choose someone because they're $50 cheaper, did you actually get a reply from them quickly? Who did you talk to? Is the $50 when you're buying a house for $800,000 the deal breaker? Or is it the customer service that's going to be more important? So sometimes I think it's more important for clients to get a better idea of fit with their team than it is about the actual cost. And I love that you mentioned the land transfer tax for first-time homebuyers, because a first-time homebuyer from a mortgage perspective can be different from a first-time homebuyer for the land transfer tax rebate perspective. And the nuance of that is really important because we always ask that question. And the clients are like, but I qualify for this from a mortgage because I haven't owned a home for so long, or I've been abroad for so long. And I'm like, well, the memo says, have you ever owned a home anywhere in the world, ever? It's a one-time deal. This is a government rebate, so it's going to be hard to get it. And if you've been legally married to someone while they owned a home, you no longer qualify either.
Right.
But if it's a common law couple or friends or family or what have you, and one person is a first-time home buyer and the other person is not, they can still qualify for a portion of the rebate. So there's different nuances there too, where they can save some money as long as they give their team the right information right away.
Right. And the other reality of working with a real estate lawyer is that the most expensive and the least expensive are probably like maybe $200 apart, like on a big swing, and so in a lot of cases, as you mentioned, it's about the right fit, but ideally the buyer or borrower is willing to work with someone that either the realtor has worked with, or in my world, I prefer it be someone that I have worked with, because the communication is just so much more effective if we all know each other and have worked together before.
Yeah, it makes us all look like pros. Yep. And like I was saying before, kind of touched on, it says when you choose your team, choose who you trust is going to do the right work for you if it gets hard. If the purchase is easy, a lot of people can do it. Same with the real estate side. When things are easy, any new realtor or veteran realtor or whatever can navigate it, but it takes a pro when things get a little bit complicated, and it's the same with any role, and especially for assembling your team. I think that's a good spot to take a break for now. When we come back, we're going to talk about what kind of things can go wrong on closing, because that's the fun start. So we'll be right back. Hey, it's Nick Fundytus. Question: what's your favorite social media platform? Are you big on Instagram? Do you Reddit? No matter where you are, I'd love for you to find me there and connect. All you need to do is type @NickFundytus and follow, and let's you and I connect. I'd love to be able to provide you the right answers, the right resources, and the right content to help you make your next move. If you send me a question, I always answer back. So subscribe, and I'll see you there soon. So we're back with Cecilia Perdigao and Chris Allard, and we are talking about what can go wrong now in real estate closing. So what surprises or problems can come up for closings, and then how do we deal with those? Feel free to use specific examples. I've got a couple that have happened over the last decade. No names, obviously, but yeah. But there's this is where the interesting stories are.
Yeah, I'll dive into that one if you don't mind. Yeah. We've definitely seen all sorts of last-minute challenges, and by all means, we try to be as proactive as possible and outline things that we would see as potentially being problematic to try to solve that situation early. But it's always important for us to remind our clients that they perhaps need to make sure that the money is available. So sometimes people might have money in locked-in type of accounts, or perhaps the funds are in RRSPs, and it may take a day, 2 or 3 days to move the funds. So you definitely want to make sure your money is available. You also want to make sure that you have your home insurance set up. So we often seem to get a call, the day before closing, the day of closing, hey, I don't have home insurance. I just found this out. Like, in many cases, it's not really true that they've just found out, but you know what? Maybe we should have reminded them a few extra times, right? And so home insurance is often another big one that I think clients can probably solve relatively quickly, and it should probably get done earlier. Let's not leave that to the last second. You want to jump in?
Sure. You touched on the two most important ones. It's all about money. Basically, you want to make sure you haven't done anything to surprise your lender on the day of closing. As much as your broker's team may review everything, sometimes the funding or the underwriter will only review the file the morning of closing. I don't understand why that happens, but it does. And sometimes there will be something on there that will surprise them that apparently they didn't know or they don't like, and we need to address it.
I can talk about that just quickly.
Yeah, that would be good.
The reason that happens is because a lot of financial institutions or mortgage companies have certain pools of money or investor funds, and the investor is actually the one who is doing an audit. Now, this is not mom and pop investor. This might be TD Bank has a pool of money that they need to audit. And when it's not a busy market, they have all the time in the world to audit that. In a very busy market or the busy day of the month, like the 1st and the 15th, perhaps they get a bit behind and they're only able to audit that file a day before. It's not something that we want to see, but it definitely creates a lot of problems, and it creates last minute issues where sometimes the money gets sent from the lender to the lawyer's office at the very last minute. And so that's no fault of the borrower, no fault of the lawyer, no fault of the broker. It just happens. And in those instances, it's very important for the lawyer to let us know that they haven't received the dollars. And on our end, it's important that we have the right people to call, whether that's the credit manager, the director of funding, whoever the lender is. Experienced mortgage brokers will have the contact info for the very top people who can click the button and make the problem go away. And that's probably the biggest, most stressful issue is the last minute audit and the lack of funds.
Okay. On the lawyer side, there's been one or two times over my career where we had to ask lawyers if they could do a holdback. So one of these times was it was in the Golden Triangle. It was on Robert Street. It was some wonderful clients of ours. They bought this house, I think it was $500,000, and the sellers had agreed that they were going to repair this nasty old balcony on the front. The house was great, but our buyers were first-time buyers. They didn't have time to do this, but it was unsafe. They wanted to have kids in this house, and this thing, you could not stand on it anymore. So the sellers agreed in the contract, in our agreement of purchase and sale, which was important, that they would have this done before closing, and that it would be done in a professional manner. We used the wording that was recommended to us by the lawyer on that file, and then, as all first-time buyers do, all buyers do really, they were taking a nice romantic stroll through the neighborhood to go see where they were going to be living in a few weeks, and they still got this nasty old balcony. It's about a month out, so they phoned me and they just said, "Hey, Nick, by the way," and I said, "I'll look into it." I think I drove by it a week later and it's still not done. I called the agent on the other side, veteran agent. Sort of thought she could steamroll the newer guy, and like all kinds of pushback on this. Said that, my seller's really busy. You don't understand them, And I said, well, it's in the contract and it needs to be done. But we weren't getting anywhere agent to agent. So we escalated. We went to the lawyers, and they did what's called a holdback. Can you explain how those work?
I can explain how they work and don't work.
Okay.
So a holdback is the idea of one of the law firms holding back a certain amount of funds from the sale proceeds, so that way the buyers front it, the sellers don't receive it until something is completed. Then the question is, who's the one holding it?
Okay.
For how long? Where does the authority come from to release the holdback? So it's a quick fix. But using your example, one of the ways to avoid that coming up on the day of closing is if the repairs are required to be completed and written evidence being provided to the other party at least 7 days prior to the closing date.
Okay.
That takes away a lot of drama.
Right.
And I understand in a busy market, it's harder to negotiate those things. A holdback is used rather than a price reduction, because a price reduction then can mess around with your calculations for your mortgage.
Sure.
So you don't want to mess around with a purchase price necessarily, because it could have waterfall effects trickling down.
Like if that seller is all of a sudden getting $10,000 less for their place, and they've agreed to purchase another place, and that's $10,000 less in pocket or whatever.
Well, there's ratios as well.
Yeah, it has more to do with the fact that really we have to reopen the file and say, well, if you were buying with a minimum down payment and the purchase price is less, now we have to change the loan amount.
Okay.
So that's the real last minute hurdle, and that doesn't happen instantly.
No, and so that's why the holdback is a quicker fix, because then we're not messing with the purchase price. The downside of a holdback is then what happens if the work isn't done? Who's the one doing it? If the work is shoddy. Yeah. So I have funds in trust still from holdbacks from almost 2 years ago, and I'm following up going, so, I have this money and I want to be releasing it. I just don't know to whom. And it was all coming down to the idea that the contractors weren't available as quickly as people wanted.
Okay.
The repairs were being done under warranty. And it took about 3 months to figure out, were these repairs even done?
Okay.
And it turns out that they were, and everything's fine. And so everyone's got their money now. But it took 3 months of me emailing back and forth that, of course, we're not going to charge legal fees for, because the holdback isn't sufficient enough to do that. That would not make for good lawyering.
It's not good. Yeah.
No,
it's not good PR. Right?
No, I probably wouldn't get referrals or customers coming back if I charged for that. But that's a reality. And sometimes if the terms of the holdback aren't clearly set out, then people have different expectations.
Right.
So when a holdback is being negotiated, I think both lawyers would just like to be contacted, so that way we can make sure that the wording is clear and concise. Mm-hmm. Because when everybody understands it to be the same way, life is good.
Well, and in this case, to bring it all home, the two lawyers were the ones who negotiated the holdback. So our buyer side lawyer talked to the other side, and the other side lawyer said, yeah, that's definitely in the contract. It was clear what was supposed to be done. Let's write something together. And I tell you what, that balcony was done about 3 days later. It turned around real quick, because I think we were going to hold back $10,000, and it maybe would have cost $1,500 to fix that balcony. So, that one ended up being an example of where it works smoothly. But the whole kind of idea here is that there can be issues that come up on closing, and when you have the team and you escalate to us right away, don't let a problem fester. If you're a buyer, if you don't let the problem fester, or if you're a seller, and you escalate to us right away, you have a much better chance of it all getting handled smoothly and seamlessly. And sometimes we handle things behind the scene that you didn't even see. Okay, real quick before we talk about solutions here and then close out the podcast, what is the strangest thing you've seen on closing?
I was just thinking of my strangest thing. I had an elderly couple that was selling their home, and I got a call on the morning of closing that the purchasers did not want to close because during their walkthrough, they discovered that squirrels had come in, chewed up the carpet, and made a mess in the house. And I did not actually know how to respond to this email, because I'm like, so you're telling me in a span of 12 hours, the squirrels have invaded, and my elderly couple that have downsized to move into a retirement home are not closing today because the squirrels have invaded. And it turns out that it came down to...
What's a squatter?
Well, and they trashed the house. They guess they had a squirrel party. But it turned out that it was actually the buyers during their final walkthrough, or they had two walkthroughs. So the one before, they had left a window open. So they enabled the squirrels to come in. So it was a lot of fast talking between lawyers and real estate agents, actually, because the real estate agents were also at the property, so they knew what was going on.
The walkthrough, yeah.
Because, of course, we're supposed to believe our clients.
Yeah.
However, Ottawa's a small town. We as lawyers need to advocate for our clients, but also know that if our word is worth anything, we better make sure we know what we're saying is true.
Sure.
And, of course, the agents knew what was what. And we were able to negotiate something so that my elderly clients still received their money on time, purchasers received their property, But that was an odd one. I really did not know what to say to the squirrels have moved into the house and trashed it.
You got any?
Yeah, you know what? I don't have a great memory for those types of things because I'm very solution oriented and there's the solution and let's move past it and set and forget it, I guess. But
Are you going to run for office somewhere? You've just done very well with that.
Maybe, thank you. One that I do remember though that hadn't happened to me prior to that instance was the seller wasn't ready to move out, just simply hadn't packed.
I had that too.
Right, and yeah, I mean that's a stressful situation for all the parties involved, and you kind of shake your head, going like, how did this even happen? But it does happen. I don't know how you solve that situation. That's more of a you guys.
Yeah, then it goes back to the realtors, lawyers, if it needs to. In my case, the buyer is really cool about it. He lived with his parents on the corner, and he said, "Yeah, they look like they got like 5 hours left of packing here," and I said, like, do you want me to escalate this? And as I said, I'm definitely going to let the lawyers know, but like, what action would you like to take? And he said, like, it's fine, but I just want to make sure that I'm not liable insurance-wise. I said, we'll figure out what's the issue here, and then we'll make sure that they're all cleared out. So it was solved because he was really cool about it. The weirdest one that I had was a couple of years ago. I was selling my accountant's house, and the buyer for that one, their agent was a really new agent, and phoned me on the Wednesday before it was supposed to close. It was supposed to close on a Tuesday. And so she phoned me and said, I'm sorry, my client can't close. He wasn't truthful about his finances. He doesn't have a permanent contract. He has like a temporary contract, and his income was not what it's showing as what it's supposed to be. He's not gonna be able to close. And I said, well, you need to, because these guys have bought another place. The seller, like, there's other people up the line that they bought from that have bought another place. There's going to be cascading, and you know where it's all going to cascade to? It's going to cascade to you, like you and your client, like getting sued. And like, I'm not trying to scare you here, but like the first thing you want to do is start documenting everything and talk to the lawyer on your side. What we did was I talked to that agent and I said, let's, if your mortgage broker can't get a mortgage for this guy, can at least we take a Hail Mary and we'll try and talk to one of the mortgage brokers.
Oh, Chris.
Yeah. So I don't think I knew you as well at that time.
Probably not.
So it was Kristen, Kristen Stouffer, who's been on the podcast as well. And I phoned her. It was like 8:00 at night. And I said, can you talk to this buyer? And the buyer was not our client, but we got permission from them to introduce them. Kristen turned something around in about 24 hours to say, yeah, we explained to him it's going to hurt the buyer, it's going to hurt. It's going to be an interest rate that he was not expecting, but he will be able to carry that for a year until he can get a better interest rate and he gets his permanent contract. And they closed. It's
probably less expensive than not closing at all. So it was.
Oh yeah,
prudent.
Because then he'd have no house and whatever he's getting sued for, right? So the cost of putting it back on market. So you guys have been awesome. Thank you for coming on today. The last thing I want to say is somebody who's interested in hiring you, where would they find you?
Definitely on the website at lapierrelaw.ca, Facebook, Instagram under Cecilia Perdigao. You can find me. Ultimately, we're old school. Call us, email us. Just reach out. I wouldn't recommend sending a message through Messenger or Instagram and expecting me to reply in the same kind of level of professionalism.
Send me a message through Instagram and we'll get a hold of you. Yeah.
For me, it's chrisallard.ca. That's our website, and a ton of our clients do Google us, so you can send us a message through the website or find my contact info there, and my phone number is 613-324-2389. There you go.
And I can say, what's your phone number?
613-830-1112.
Okay. And Chris, I know that someone can just go on Reddit too and just say, who's a mortgage broker in Ottawa?
That's what I hear. I've got to sign on to that platform at one point.
What is this Reddit thing?
I know. I'm a young guy. I feel like I should know this.
Is it like the Facebooks? Yeah. If you're listening to this and not watching the video, Chris has a little bit of a baby face. So yeah, he's definitely the youngest among us. So I appreciate it, guys. You were wonderful, and we hope to have you back and your expertise sometime in the future.
Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks.
What is people first when it comes to real estate? After all, we're buying and selling properties, so is it really about people? People first just means that people are more important than properties. It means that at the heart of every move, there's a human story. And that's why my team and I have to be excellent for you every time you buy or sell a home. That's why we take so much time to educate all our clients on the market and on the process. That's why we are continually improving our processes, honing our negotiation skills so that you know you are getting Ottawa's best when you work with us. That's why we stay in touch year after year with our past clients, because I believe, and we believe as a team, that being a business in Ottawa means that we have an obligation to our community, to improve it, to serve it, and to connect the people who live in it. In an era where property sales are often prioritized over people, our team puts relationships first. One client at a time, one relationship at a time. That's people first real estate.